Hi, I'm Molly Crabbe of MC Executive Coaching to report on change management case study from Living Wells Church. Let me set the stage here to help you understand the context for bus ministry gone bad at Living Wells Church in Wallop, Washington. The senior pastor was planning for his retirement and set things up for his replacement to come on board and help guide the staff through a 5-year long transition. The senior pastor focused on preparing the congregation for this transition and purposely did not get involved with ministry details that should be better handled by his replacement. This time without direct leadership meant that some church ministries were hanging on by a thread. Volunteers kept doing what they had always done and asked few questions. Living Wells had been active in their community for decades, providing volunteers for city festivals, providing food for those in need through a food pantry, and busing children from low-income housing to church on Saturday evenings. The bus ministry at Living Wells Church was once thriving and a crown that many wore as a sign that the church was doing good. But it had been struggling for several years without key leaders and pastoral oversight when the new children's coordinator had come on board. The new coordinator went to leadership to inform them primarily of safety concerns, but also because of a lack of understanding of why the ministry was still happening. Many of the kids being picked up did not have parent authorization forms on file, and there were behavior problems on the bus and in the classroom. And to make the situation more complex, there were only 2 qualified bus drivers, one of whom had just notified her that they were stepping down from their role. These issues brought the bus ministry to the front of the line for urgent assessment in children's ministry. Through the lens of Cotter's change theory, we can examine what worked and what did not during this organizational change at Living Wells Church. Cotter's change approach suggests using a process with 8 steps. First, create a sense of urgency. Second, build a guiding coalition. Third, form a strategic vision. Fourth, enlist a volunteer army. Fifth, enable action by removing barriers. Sixth, generate short-term wins. Seventh, sustain acceleration. 8, institute change. Using this framework, we can evaluate the process for change with the bus ministry gone bad at Living Wells Church. The ministry leaders triaged a ministry that none truly understood and had no historical information to guide them. There was no plan. The safety issues and the lack of volunteers brought the sense of urgency. Because leadership at the top was unsure who should decide what to do, the ministry went on for several more months before the issues were addressed. The volunteers were frustrated and even mad at the leadership for not handling the problems. After several months, the coordinator worked out a plan with the volunteers that they could live with, and they jumped back on board to help and even saw that it was likely time to close down the ministry. The group of volunteers did become the guiding coalition for how to end the ministry and care for the children that would be affected. Though the ministry did eventually close, there was no strategic vision for what to do next. The volunteers were just doing what they had always done. They did not have a specific call from God to serve the low-income families. They were serving their church in a capacity that they felt comfortable with. They knew what to do, and they liked being there. The next part of Cotter's plan is to enlist an army of people to come on board. There was nothing that people were being called to next. The ministry was just ending. There was no army needed. Removing barriers to the next step, and that did happen. Leadership signed off on closing the ministry and did the necessary phone calls to care for the families involved and did take care of the leaders. Notice I say they took care of the families and the leaders, but there were still other stakeholders that they didn't involve. Short-term wins were non-existent as the children's coordinator could not see what was needed to help the volunteers succeed, even though the ministry had ended. The volunteers and staff did sustain acceleration by sticking to the timeline they had set out to inform all the stakeholders that they knew of or they thought of about what was happening and to change that was coming, and it happened on schedule. People were told, but most had not been consulted ahead of the plan. Shortly after this ministry ended, so did the Saturday evening service at the church. Several dynamics were at play here, and the people were the most critical element. In hindsight, after discussing with the staff involved, they all regretted that there was nothing they could point people to that was coming up or was exciting. The Kubler-Ross change curve shows how people move through change, not just how an organization experiences change. Kubler-Ross's theory reminds us that people accept change emotionally, materially, and physically. Though, in the end, there was much effort spent on the volunteers to help them accept the change by doing appreciation dinners, gifts, accolades from the pulpit. There were months and even years of frustration that the church was not doing what it had always done. People were just upset. They didn't like change. This group of people liked this ministry. They liked being together, and they never found another place where they fit, and it ended up leaving the church. Ultimately, the bus ministry gone bad was indeed bad change management. All staff involved learned several lessons on balancing the needs of the organization with the needs of the people. And the fact that it was a church meant that the people involved several groups, not just volunteers in children's ministry. There was the congregation as a whole, other volunteers in the church, the low-income families, the staff, and there were many others. Changes made in churches are dynamic and involve many stakeholders. Change needs to be bathed in prayer, allowing the Holy Spirit to guide the process with skilled staff and mature volunteers. This is Molly Crabbe with MC Executive Coaching, signing off. See you next time for more change management fun.